And now, this is the news.
The news. The news. The news.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Now let's take a look at the headlines in the news this evening. Nigeria signs bilateral trade agreements with the Netherlands. The Senate to pass 2020 budget next week. United Nations urges countries to increase carbon cutting ambitions to avoid warming by over 1.5 Celsius. And Maltese police extend inquiry into the murder of journalist Daphne Galizia. The details of those and more shortly.
This is Maureen Ogola reporting live from the Lagos State House alongside Keja.
Clementine Okonye reporting from the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Joy Kalyu reporting live from the Murtala Muhammed International Airport.
For news that's close to home, hear it first on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Up to the minute news that matters to you. Our reporters are always on the go, bringing it as it happens.
The lawmakers have decided to work with the executive for the development of Lagos State. Babatunde Pratt reporting. It has been 5 days of banter, training and confirmation at the Senate. Judges McNaughton reporting.
Listen to the major news every day, 6 a.m., 12 noon, 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. live on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Hello there, great evening to you. Thank you for staying with us. And now here's the news. In detail, I am Godwin Asukwo. Nigeria and the Netherlands have signed a number of agreements to improve bilateral trade volumes as well as private sector investments between the two countries. This was the thrust of a meeting between the President, Muhammadu Buhari, and the Prime Minister of Netherlands at the State House, Abuja, on Tuesday. Both leaders reviewed the progress made with implementing the Memorandum of Understanding on deepening the bilateral relations between the two nations, which was signed by the foreign ministers at The Hague in July 2018. President Buhari and the Prime Minister Rutte also renewed their commitment to fighting human trafficking and supporting the victims. Noting concerns over the security situation in the West African sub-region and Nigeria, the Netherlands acknowledged the sustained effort of Nigeria in the fight against insurgency. The Dutch Prime Minister said Netherlands is Nigeria's third biggest trade partner.
We're also working together on the issue of migration. That's why the Minister for Migration was part of my delegation. And my country is looking forward to continuing this excellent partnership. One of the focuses of this visit is the economic cooperation. Both Nigeria and the Netherlands stand to benefit greatly from this economic cooperation. And I'm proud to say that the Netherlands is Nigeria's third biggest trading partner, as an exporter and as an importer of Nigerian products. And there's still a lot of room to expand our trade. And therefore I'm also proud that we just signed a communique agreeing to deepen our political and economic partnership.
Prime Minister Rutte is on a two-day working visit to Nigeria. The 2020 budget proposal of the federal government will be passed next week. The Senate President Ahmed Lawan, who spoke at the plenary on Tuesday, said the biggest estimate, which would have been passed this week, will be passed before the end of next week. He warned that the Senate will by next week not tolerate further delay in the submission of the budget report by the Senate Committee on Appropriation headed by Senator Barau Jibrin. He therefore gave the committee up till next Tuesday to unfailingly turn in its report at plenary. In a related development, the Senate has asked security agencies to apprehend those behind the violence recorded during the November 16 elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states. This was one of the resolutions reached by the Red Chamber after the matter of election was raised during plenary by Senator George Sakibo. The Senate also observed a minute silence in honor of those killed during the just concluded elections. The All Progressives Congress, the APC governors, have been asked to champion the implementation of the new minimum wage. APC National Chairman Adams Oshimole stated this at a parley of Progressive Governors Forum and the federal government in Jos, Plateau State. Oshimole also urged the governors to give special attention to education, adding that the PGF should work with the party and its leadership in the interest of Nigerians. President Muhammadu Buhari had earlier urged the governors to raise the tempo of the anti-graft battle in their domains. Now let's take you to the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, where Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has fixed February the 25th, 2020 for the ruling on the case of former Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Olisa Metu. After nearly 4 years, Justice Okunabang will rule on the trial of Metu, who is accused of laundering 400 million naira allegedly received from the Office of the National Security Advisor in 2015. Metu is also accused of an illegal cash transaction of $2 million, violating a provision of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act. Meanwhile, a federal high court sitting in Lagos has given an order for suspected internet fraudster Ismaila Mustafa, alias Mumfa, be remanded in prison custody. Justice Mohammed Liman gave this order shortly after Mumfa was arraigned before him on a 14-count charge. The counts bore on fraud, money laundering, and running a foreign exchange business without authorization of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has restated his administration's commitment to zero tolerance for all forms of sexual and gender-based violence. The governor stated this at the 2019 Walk to Commit and Act rally organized by the state's Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team in conjunction with the Nigerian Bar Association Ikorodu branch. Speaking at the rally, Sanwo-Olu noted that Lagos remains committed to the UN Conventions on Domestic and Sexual Violence. Governor Sanwo-Olu appealed to victims of sexual and domestic offences not to keep silent, but report incidences to appropriate authorities. The Christian Council of Nigeria has urged Christians, citizens, and all religious groups to seek and maintain peace, speaking ahead of its 90th anniversary and the 30th General Assembly in Lagos. The CCN President, Most Reverend Benebo Manuel, urged citizens to be good examples of their communities by tolerating one another. Reverend Manuel said the CCN is currently partnering UNICEF through awareness and campaign to end violence against children. He urged political leaders to institute policies that will protect the children.
We worked with UNICEF recently and we carried campaign for ending violence against children. We produced for the first time in the UNICEF's history codes of conduct to guide pastors, to guide members and worshippers on how to relate with children to avoid violence against children. And then we, of course, do election monitoring, we do sensitization, empowerment, and campaign for food and for water, because ecology is also important to us.
And now to education-related matters. The Federal University of Technology, Kwara, has expelled 6 students over the bullying of a fellow student outside the campus. The expelled students are Kwara Agbola, 300 level, Oluwadare Tobiloba, 200 level, Nandi Jessica, 200 level, Ajuwon Emanuela, 100 level, Emmanuel Taiwo, 100 level, and Alao Cecilia, 100 level. According to the Deputy Director, Corporate Communications, Adegbenro Adebanjo, the expulsion followed the recommendation of an investigative panel which probed the incident. He said the expulsion is in line with the position of page 48 of the 2019-2020 Students' Handbook, which prescribes expulsion for students who engage in sexual and physical assault or battery on another student. This news continues shortly with business for news, entertainment, and sports.
The news. Timely, fresh as it breaks on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
And now the business news.
There is a need to scale up investments and access to finance for sustainability-focused projects in the country. This can only be achieved through quality leadership and policies from the right set of leaders who are focused on development. This submission came from guests and panelists at the ongoing Access Bank Sustainability Week. Speaking about the week, the bank's head, Sustainability, Omobolanle Victor Laniel, said the institution is focused on contributing to the global discourse, including the development of global responsible banking principles. She maintained that sustainable business practices are the only right way to do business.
And the aim also is to let everyone know that we have our individual roles to play in achieving the sustainable development goals. So being a banker or working in a bank does not exempt you from being a leader in the community, being a leader in society, and contributing your own individual quota to ensuring that society is a better place.
One of the trainers at the event, Dr. Tayo, speaks on environmental risks attached to businesses in the country.
Environmental risks relate to such risks that impact on our environment, like water quality, like air quality, you understand, and like the land, and so on and so forth. Social risks will involve operations in areas where you have issues relating to child labor, issues relating to resettlement issues that relate to influx of people coming into a particular environment and now putting, a lot of challenge on the social infrastructure of that particular place.
And now, the foreign news. The foreign news.
The UN says countries will have to increase their carbon-cutting ambitions fivefold if the world is to avoid warming by over 1.5 Celsius. The annual emissions gap report shows that even if all current promises are met, the world will warm by more than double the amount by 2100. The report also said emissions have gone up by 1.5% per year in the last decade. In 2018, the total reached 55 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. This is putting the Earth on course to experience a temperature rise of 3.2 Celsius by the end of the century. 15 of the 20 wealthiest nations have no timeline for net zero target. Still from foreign scene, Maltese Prime Minister Joseph Muscat says his Chief of Staff, Keith Schembri, has stood down as police extend their inquiry into the murder of journalist Daphne Caruana. Mr. Schembri was not available for comment, but reports said he was assisting the police. The inquiry intensified last week with the arrest of Maltese businessman Jürgen Fenech.
Take it away with the entertainment news.
Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano has appointed Nollywood actor Zoobi Maiko as his special advisor on media. The actor announced the news on his Instagram page, where he shared a photo of himself holding what appeared to be his appointment letter. He wrote, "Duty calls, #SA on media." He captioned the photos. Michael is a famous Nollywood actor, model, television personality, and philanthropist who's known for playing criminal, villain, and hitman roles in movies.
And now, updates on the sports news.
A look at sports now. Super Eagles coach Gernot Roy is making efforts to ensure his contract is renewed by the Nigeria Football Federation. The renewal of Raw's contract has come under controversy as the NFF issued fresh conditions for extension. Raw's contract expires in June 2020, and it's expected that talks on renewal should have commenced. To end the news, let's take another look at the top stories.
Nigeria Info, your number one for news. Always spot on, fresh and direct on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Nigeria signed bilateral trade agreement with the Netherlands. The Senate has pledged to pass 2020 budget next week. The United Nations has urged countries to increase carbon-cutting ambitions fivefold to avoid warming by over 1.5 Celsius. Still from a foreign scene, we told you that Maltese police has extended inquiry into the murder of journalist Daphne Caruana. That's the news edited by Georges McNobson-Ido. Thank you for listening.